All right, guys, it is Tuesday at 7 o'clock Central, and we've got a special edition of Conversations with Commodores. We've got the man, number 76, coming out of Valley Head, Alabama, a DeKalb County Sports Hall of Fame inductee.
That's right, man.
Ken Hammond, the ham bone. Ken,
that's right.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. How's your day going?
Brothers, it's going good. You and I have been talking about doing this off and on ever since you started. I've had reasons that I didn't. We've talked about. I'm glad you have done what you're doing because you actually put me in contact with a lot of guys that I played with. So it's been good, man. But yeah, all good. Dropped Kathy off at the North Valley Head Airport, which is what I call Chattanooga. Everything really within a 100-mile radius is Valley Head, so I live in technically Fort Payne, but I say South Valley Head.
South Valley Head it is. Ken, they're already out for you tonight. I'm just going to go roll call. You just say whatever comes to your mind. Kenny Cole, Robin Giltner, Dwayne Jones, OJ Fleming, Greg Simmons, Jeff Madden. They're just rolling all in for you, Ken.
All my brothers, man. All my brothers. Love them.
And Jeff calls you Valley Head's finest athlete, and there's no one going to dispute that this evening. That's for sure.
Out of 500 people, it's a real low bar, but I'll take it.
Oh, we got Ed Parrish in the house.
All right, man.
And we got Mark Matlock, who calls you the mayor of Valley Head. Ken, let's talk about where you came from.
Okay.
Let's talk about Northeast Alabama. What was life like growing up in Northeast Alabama in the 60s and 70s?
If you've ever seen movies, like Loretta Lynn, Coal Miner's Daughter, it's Appalachia. It's everything that you've seen in movies from Pennsylvania through West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky. We didn't get electricity in a lot of places up here until the 60s. The first house I can remember living in, we had an outhouse. So it's good, hardworking, blue collar. It's God and football. That's what everything's about up here. So wouldn't take a thing. If I could have grown up in Beverly Hills versus Valley Head, I wouldn't trade it, man. It's been a great experience.
Growing up in such a small slice of heaven, Ken, did you play different sports, or was football really your main athletic endeavor?
We only had 3 sports. We had baseball, basketball, and football. We had 30 kids in my class. So we had all started playing sports together since 4th, 5th grade. I tried to play baseball and I tried to play basketball and I tried to play golf in the last 8 years. And I knew when I tried to play baseball, my hand-eye coordination, I used to say I had the same hand-eye coordination as Helen Keller. And then people said, "Oh man, you're being insensitive." And I said, "All right, I got the same hand-eye coordination as Pet Rock." I couldn't hit a baseball. I can't hit a damn golf ball. Basketball, they would put me in to foul people. So thank God for football, man. That was 1 out of 3. I'll take it.
Well, speaking of football, in the heart of the Southeast during Bear Bryant's heyday, and with football being as important as it was then and certainly is now, was first of all, was Valley Head in the community, was it a Bama centric fan base, or was there, I know you're not that far, heaven, forgive me, you're not that far from UT, you're not that far from Athens, you're not that far from a lot of other major state universities, but was Bama the main school that folks rooted for?
It's 50-50, man. It is. There's 70,000 people in this county, and I make the joke, there's 35,000 Alabama fans, 35,000 Auburn fans, and I'll add 2. There's 2 Vanderbilt fans I know of. Every now and then I'll see some guy, that I know when I used to be a member of the golf course, country club, or whatever, wearing a Tennessee hat. And I said, man, I said, you're the only Tennessee fan here, and I'm only Vanderbilt fan here. I said, we need to start a union. But no, it's split 50-50.
Ken, when growing up, when did you kind of form in your head that you were going to be able to play on the next level, meaning in college? When did that kind of percolate in your thought process?
I started playing in the fifth grade, like everybody else. And you go through Pee Wee ball, and Valleyhead is unique in that even we're the smallest school in the county. We had 18 kids on the football team. All right. And a lot of guys that I played with know this. Our field was like a half a mile away from the school. So we would walk from the school with our pads down to the field to practice. We didn't have any facilities. So there was one gas station in town, and it had a grease rack, one thing, car lift, and they had a chalkboard there. And then City Hall, which was across from the football field, they had a chalkboard in there. So we'd walk down the football field to practice. When we went to a game, at halftime, we'd go to the filling station, and they'd draw up plays on the chalkboard, and the visiting team would go into City Hall, and the room was where the council met. We didn't have a band. Like I said, we had 18 kids. When we scrimmaged, everybody played, pretty much every play. When we scrimmaged, we would scrimmage half line. So like the right side of the line would be on offense, and then we'd just flip flop, and we'd be on defense going against the left side. I was very fortunate in that we had some guys that came out. I mean, we had guys back in the 30s and 40s that had signed, with Alabama, Auburn. And then we had later on guys that signed with Purdue, Wyoming. The last big name guy was in '68. He signed with Tennessee. So we were so small that we were off everybody's radar. But when schools were recruiting and they'd leave Chattanooga going to Birmingham, believe it or not, they'd swing by Valleyhead, and they'd always stop in Fort Payne. Fort Payne's had several kids that go to the next level. My first SEC offer was Auburn after my junior year, to answer your question. I kind of sort of knew that I was going, because we had a fullback that I'd play with. He got a scholarship to Jackson State. And brother, coming out of Valleyhead, if I had got a scholarship to Marion Military Academy, I'd have been jumping for joy. We actually had a kid to go down there that I knew. But kid signed with Jackson State, and they were looking. I had some smaller schools looking, and then the next thing I know, Auburn comes in. And then when Auburn offered me after my junior year, it just blew up, man.
And Ken, was that Shug Jordan, or was that Doug Barfield?
Barfield, yeah.
Barfield. I didn't know what year that they switched over.
Yeah, this was 76, 77. So yeah, but it was Barfield.
And so that kind of opened the floodgates that put you on the map, so to speak, with other schools.
And I've talked to so many kids about recruiting. I said, once you get that first offer, and then of course this is pre-internet, but you got people that kind of keep tabs on players in areas. And then the next thing I know, when Auburn offered me, there were some professors. I get an offer from Georgia next. And there were some professors from like Jack State or somewhere, and they would come up and watch me practice because they need Georgia to offer, and then it fortunately just started snowballing. Yeah.
Well, as small of a school and small of a program, it's not like the folks who are coming to recruit at practice, they didn't exactly blend in. I mean, everybody knew who was there, didn't they? Yeah. I mean, wasn't it pretty evident?
Absolutely. It was, Coach Dooley flew in to the Fort Payne airport. And this is 76, 77. And his jet had all the Georgia Bulldog, blah, blah, blah on it. People were just going back crap. Because most of them hated Georgia.
Yeah.
And they was hoping, that I would stay in state. It was fun, and it's small towns. There's no secrets. So it was cool. Barfield came up. My uncle, the mayor man Gene, he had gone to Auburn. Huge Auburn guy. And whenever I'd go on recruiting stuff down to Auburn, anywhere I went on recruiting, I'd carry somebody with. Because if the guys that know me, if I'm having a good time, everybody's gonna have a good time. So I would carry my uncle. I think he graduated Auburn in like 48, 49, but I'd carry them down there, and we'd go to Sewell Hall, and they'd get wined and dined, and he'd have all the perks, and he was just in hog heaven. And Barfield came up to Valley Head. My uncle had a dinner there, and for him, and I mean it was the coaches that were coming. I just went brain dead. Clemson, Coach Pell. Former Alabama guy. We had a kid from Fort Payne named Willie Underwood that had signed with Clemson. And some of the guys that had played with Coach Pell were coaching in this area. And so they were kind of tipping him off on guys, to recruit. And with Coach Pell, you had Danny Ford and Joe Kynes. They'd all played at Bama, so they were recruiting this area anyway, and they were from this area. So he came into town. Of course, Coach Pancoast. My 6 official visits, and these are pretty cool stories. And if I get to babbling, man, you stop me. But I'd never flown.
And no way I'm stopping you. You just keep
I'd
going.
never been on a plane. So my first official visit was to LSU. And I flew on a jet plane down there. And
Charlie McAlexander?
No, this was 77. The guy that I remember was named Stovall.
Okay.
Whoever the head coach was, I think he died in a plane crash.
Oh.
But the guy that was kind of recruiting me, he had played there. And I just remember, because LSU might have well been UCLA. I didn't know that much about him, but went down there. Great time. Their big time player was Charlie something. They called him Charles the Great. He was a running back. Cajun fans, the greatest fans on the planet. Had a big time, man. Some of the craziest fans I ever met. I'm not a big fan of hot weather, and I just remember on the recruiting trip down, they were playing Wyoming, and they were spraying for mosquitoes before, like a Friday. And I'm thinking, man, this is gonna be hot, man. But had a great time. Every school I visited, I had a freaking blast. But LSU was my first plane ride, yeah, and first.
When Dooley came in to recruit you, I bet that made the Sand Mountain Times news. It had to have been news.
Yeah, it did. Again, growing up in Valley Head, my mama always told me to never cuss around women or kids. So I'm going to try and do this with you without using a lot of profanity. Growing up in Valley Head,
hold on, Ken. Greg Simmons, do you hear this? I know you have sensitive ears, so you might want to cover them. Ken's about to talk, so go ahead, Ken.
Oh, yeah. Greg, another brother, much love, man. We're the smallest school. We're the poorest. Our per capita income right now is like $15,000 a year. And like I said, we didn't have a band. Our halftime entertainment, our cheerleaders danced to Bee Gees being played over the loudspeaker. So we were still primarily playing county schools. We were playing, Fife, Plainview. I mean, now these are all 4A schools. We played Fort Payne up until like the 60s. And we were playing Plainview. They had probably 50 kids in the band. We had 18 kids on the football team. We were country pulpwood cutters, hay hauling, coal miners, and we kicked their ass. I mean, we just would beat the crap out of them. And they finally got it to the point that they were doing areas. So we don't really play the county teams anymore. We probably, wouldn't beat them. Fife's become a powerhouse, up here in the last few years. But it was really fun to play those guys. And like I said, we were the bastards of the county. And it's kind of what I enjoyed about going to Vanderbilt. We were the bastards of the SEC, and to see so many people that I knew on the sidelines or in the stands. Granted, we didn't win a lot of games, but they weren't that damn good. So I kind of enjoyed that, man.
I bet. Kim, before we keep going, we got Dr. Roosevelt Noble, we got Russell Nicole, we got Tyler Unziger, Alfonso Harvey, Derek Sardor, Jamie Bryant, and 3 or 4 more that I've already rolled through, Ken, and I can't get to them. Of course, guys, I've got Ken Hammond, number 76 out of Valley Head, played for Coach Fred Pancoast. Who is that? Who recruited you?
Yeah.
Vanderbilt. When did he first, if you remember, when did he first make contact? What do you remember about some of those initial visits?
This is again, man. And by the way, everybody's just chimed in. About half the guys I played with, and the other half I've met or I've been on social media or through you or whatever. I love everybody that's ever played at Vanderbilt, alive or dead. These guys know this. It's a brotherhood like no other. I had this discussion last week. Wayman, I know you've interviewed Wayman, Rod Gurley, Ricky Dean. I haven't seen Ricky in 40-something years. We got together. We were talking about it. I said, you know what, man? I know a lot of guys that played on a lot of programs that won national championships. Won, 8, 9 games. And this is going to sound weird, but once you start winning, everybody loves you. They had fans coming at them. They had money people coming at them. And all these people coming at them, paying them X amount of attention, it kind of got egos involved. And it created a lot of dissension. When you're winning 2 or 3 games a year, the only people that truly love you are your mama, your teammates, and your girlfriend, and usually her ass is on the boat. It could go either way with her. So the guys that played at Vanderbilt were so tight. We're such a tight, there's no reason for us to be jealous of each other because, we weren't really having people just throwing themselves at us, and I saw that with other coach or teams. The guy I will talk a little bit about tonight, he married my first cousin, great friend of mine. He's my brother, a guy named Jim Bunch. Jim played at Alabama 76 through 79, 4-year starter, Kodak All-American, played on 2 national championship teams. And I got to watch how things worked with him versus us. And the irony is, we were treated better in Nashville than they were in Tuscaloosa. When him and my cousin Leslie would come to Nashville, if you remember anywhere around campus, if you played football, you didn't have to pay for a beer. I mean, beer was free. When you're an 18, 19-year-old kid, getting free beer is a damn perk. So we're in Nashville winning 2 or 3 games a year. We're getting free beer, get a few free dinners here and there, some other stuff. I'm in Tuscaloosa with him, and they're winning national championships. And everywhere we go, we're having to pay for everything. Beer, food, everything. And I said, dude, what's up with this? I said, this ain't right. He said, they are so spoiled. They're so used to winning. They take it for granted. He said, if we lose 1 or 2 games, they hate us. I said, Jim, if we won a national championship in Nashville right now, they'd give us the damn life and casualty building. I said, we don't, so there's upsides and downsides to everything. You know that. But I saw the upside to really successful programs, and it wasn't that damn great, man, honestly.
Ken, that's such a unique perspective about the brotherhood and how really those, when you're winning 1 or 2 or 3 games a year, you really even more so have to rely on those guys in that clubhouse, those guys in Carmichael Tower, because You know, that's who else is out there besides your family for you. You're so right about that.
That's it.
But before we get into the Vanderbilt years, Greg Simmons wants some assurance from you and from me and Kenny Cole that the statute of limitations is long expired for anything in Tennessee that may or may not have happened in Tower 3. I think it's expired. I think we're good in that.
There is two things that well, three actually. Number one, everything that I'm going to talk about that was, I won't say illegal because we really know there's no such thing as illegal, that was in a gray area, especially with recruiting. Everybody involved is dead. So statute of limitations is played out, plus they're dead. So good luck with that. Number two, any stories that I may tell about anybody other than myself, no names are going to be mentioned. As I've told you, I don't have any kids I'm having to pay for. I've been retired since I was 49. I'm in that rare sweet spot in life that very few people get to, especially at 49, that I'm not selling anything. I'm not, trying to get a donation. I'm not trying to get a vote. So, but I will only tell stuff that I did. Anybody else, if you get them on, they want to talk about their stuff, that's cool. A lot of guys have gotten religion since then. A lot of guys have got kids. Only person I've got left embarrassed is Kathy, and she's heard all this stuff, man. So, it's all good.
And she may be watching tonight. I haven't seen her roll through.
Yeah, she wanted to. I told her, this is the first time I've turned a laptop on. I told you since 2009 and I retired. So I was actually saying it was 50-50 if I could get this Zoom working. If not, I'd do, my iPhone.
Sure. All right, Ken, thank you for all that. Let's talk about the recruitment of you to Nashville.
Okay.
Was Coach Pancoast or one of the assistant coaches first ones reaching out to us? To share a little bit about that experience.
No. My dad ran for the state senate in 1962 in DeKalb, Cherokee, and Jackson County. He got elected. Now, we're Appalachia, so we don't have any black people up here. It's just mountain, coal mining. There's a few black people in Fort Payne. My whole time in school, I think there were 3 black kids, and these families had been there since we moved, since they've been there for 150 years. They were our brothers and sisters. I'm still on social media with them today. We loved them. They loved us. We had no racial problems. Right now, if you Google Valley Head, it's probably still 90. There's been a lot of Hispanic, kids move in the last 15, 20 years, but it's still probably, 90-95% white. So my dad, when he got into politics, he was very liberal, which is the 62. So he goes to Montgomery, and George Corley Wallace. And, I know, what are you, 50? How are you?
55.
55. Okay. Well, you're old enough to remember. For those that don't
know, folks were on campus in the spring of 63 when he stood in the schoolhouse door. So I know history.
Most people our age know, but for those that don't know, he was governor off and on Alabama for 5-6 terms. He did the segregation today, tomorrow, forever speech. He stood in the schoolhouse door. Well, in Alabama at that time, you could only run for 1 term, and you had to take 4 years off. Well, Wallace tried to pass a secession bill. My dad hated him because he was a racist. And my dad and another group of senators got together and they defeated the secession bill. And man, they put targets on themselves. Well, in 66, then Wallace ran his wife, Lurleen, since he couldn't run. And of course, she gets elected. Well, Wallace zeroes in on my dad. He gets beat. My dad comes back, gets reelected in 70. In 72, he ran against Eugene Bull Connor for president of the Public Service Commission. And for those that aren't familiar with that, SOB, anytime you see a clip in Birmingham where they're hosing down civil rights marchers, they're turning the dogs loose on them, Bull Connor was the fire and police commissioner. He supported all that. The bombing of the church, you know, they looked the other way. My dad hated that SOB. So my dad beats him. He gets elected to the PSC in 72. He's in office to about 75. He gets charged with inciting a bride from Southern Bell Telephone. One of your homeboys, Bill Baxley, was the attorney general. He prosecuted. My dad gets found guilty. And I told people, I said, you love George Wallace or hate him. He was tough on people that played football in Alabama, because I would have gone off if my dad hadn't got in trouble. Richmond Flower Jr., another one of your homeboys from Dothan, Wallace popped him in 68. So his son goes to Tennessee. You know, we both had good careers or whatever. The NIL has been around forever, right? Everybody's cheated since the beginning of time. It even goes to high school when, like, Fort Payne, if there was a good player in the county, they had the sock mill. This was the sock capital of the world. If there was a good football player in the county, they would go recruit him. They would give his parents jobs in the sock mill. They would rent houses for him, and they would get him to come in to play. They got some kids out of Valley Head. Valdosta, Georgia was notorious for that. I mean, they were recruiting kids, you know, in high school, giving their parents jobs and houses. I had a lot of stuff offered. 10 grand was the highest cash offer I had. And then there was cars, you know, I was getting clothes and you know, cars. In 76, if you remember, the two big names that were recruited in Alabama were Frank Warren and Byron Braggs. One went to Auburn, one went to Alabama. So you go on these recruiting trips, you got 40, 50 kids you see the same weekend everywhere. And we all got egos the size of Texas, man. And, you know, they fly you in on a Friday, or they comp you to drive in, you tour the facilities, you go out to dinner with the coaches Friday, you go to the game Saturday, you know, Saturday night you're out drinking beer or whatever, going to the frat parties. Well, in the meantime, these kids are talking. So they're like, hey man, what are they offering you? You know, hey man, it was a common known fact that Warren and Braggs both got 50 grand each. All right. That was the high bar. 50 grand was the high bar for a lot of years. If you remember when Alabama got popped in the 90s for that kid out of Memphis, it was still 50 grand. Now we had heard that Herschel later on got 100. And if that's the case, that's the best damn money Georgia's ever spent. You know, they spent millions on
up until the last couple of years, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, well, but for that 40-year gap,
yeah,
that 100 grand versus the millions they paid those coaches, best damn money they ever spent.
Yeah.
To answer your question, my brother-in-law was a Japanese guy, and this guy was a lot of the guys that are on here, they knew him. He was a character. He went to Harvard, got into Wall Street. He was one of the original whiz kids of Wall Street back in the 60s. He got popped by the SEC. He pulled federal time and federal pen in West Virginia. He gets out from up there. He comes down here in the early 70s, gets in the coal mining business. And I don't know if you guys are familiar. I think in Jasper around that area, in Birmingham, it's mainly underground, but up here it was all strip mining. These son of a bucks rode in here with the biggest bunch of outlaws on the planet. They were coming in from West Virginia. I mean, their equipment was hot. You know, they owed everybody and their brother in one area, and then moved down here. So he's out of the federal pen. He comes in, meets my sister. They get married. I'm 12, 13. He's Japanese dude who went to Harvard. You know, I'm blown away. I mean, to tell you how naive I was, my grandmother was using a Filipino doctor, and he's actually our neighbor now where we live. Great people. I couldn't understand how they didn't know each other, because these were the only two Oriental people I'd ever met. And I really couldn't comprehend the Philippines and Japan being that far apart from each other. And, you know, having 500 million people, hell, I thought they should know each other. That's how my process was in thinking at 12 or 13. But he started pushing me to step outside the box and talk to some other schools, because honestly, it was down to Clemson and Auburn. And Auburn pretty much had me on lockdown. I asked Coach Pell, I said, there are rumors that you were going to take Bear Bryant's job. And I remember like yesterday, I don't know if you know, he died several years ago of cancer. I'm actually on social media with his wife, but he said, Ken, he said, I want to be the head coach at Alabama one day, but he said, I want to be the third. He said, anybody that comes in after Coach Bryant, he said, it's almost going to be impossible. He's, you know, but my Japanese brother-in-law reached out to Vanderbilt. Actually, he called them and he said, y'all need to, you know, talk to this kid. And I go up there for a visit, and it just snowballed. One of the wildest recruiting trips. Like I said, I'm not going to name any names. When I went to Georgia on my recruiting trip, you were out 6 back then, 6 official visits. So like at Georgia, the guest host was Ellie Mae Clamp, Donna Douglas. So I met her, you know, that was huge. I went to Penn State and on a recruiting trip, and they said they're going to carry me to a wrestling match. Well, I'm pumped because I'm thinking Flair, you know, this damn college wrestling. I honestly didn't even know they had college wrestling. That was a big thing up there, you know. Like I said, LSU, they're fans. Auburn, man, I was down there like twice a month. I'd go down on unofficial. You could swing through Bremen, Georgia. I don't know if you know that much about Auburn, but Sewell Hall was their athletic door. Mr. Sewell on Sewell suits, big donor. So you go down there and you can swing back through Bremen, and they just load you up with clothes. So, I mean, I went from, you know, dressing as poor as anybody could. I am dressing like a damn pimp, man. You know, so I go to Vandy. Coach Hudgens is our academic guy. I fell in love with that guy. He's one of the coolest guys I ever met.
Was this Ken Hudgens?
Yeah. Yeah. And he was from Chattanooga. So, you know, he's talking to me. I can't remember who the Coach Hudgens really was the guy that I was talking to. Go to the game. They played Cincinnati. I think they beat them. You know, been up there Friday, did this frat party. Well, this guy, and again, I'm not going to name any names because, you know, a lot of these guys have gotten religion. Him and another guy come into the Holiday Inn there at Vanderbilt after the game. I open the door and, you know, I'm like, all right, man, let's go party. This dude walks in. He doesn't say a word. He walks over. We're facing Centennial Park. He picks up an ashtray, steps out on the balcony, just nails a car's windshield down below. And he looked at me and he said, we're going to have fun tonight. And I was like, all right. So every bar around campus we tried to go into, they were like, no, man, we told you, you couldn't come in here. You couldn't come in here. They were like, no, you know. So we ended up, you know, down on Lower Broad. This is back when Lower Broad was rough, you know. And so we partied Saturday night after the game. Sunday, I'm thinking I'm headed back home. Sunday, we're still partying. Sunday night, we're still partying. I wake up Monday and me and this dude are still partying. And I was like, dude, I got a test that I got to take in Valley to graduate. I said, I got to get back, man. You know, I had no money. Whatever money they'd given him, you know, to spend on recruits, we'd spent. So an uncle of mine had given me a jacket. I stopped in Monteagle, and I was out of gas. I pawned that jacket for like $5 to get gas money to get back to Valley Head. So that was like one of the wildest. But when I was up there, Coach Hudgens, he'd asked me what I wanted to do, and I told him I was thinking, maybe law school. I didn't know. I mean, you're 17 years old and you come out of Valley Head. But when I mentioned law school, they introduced me to Fred Thompson and James Neal. I didn't know who they were. And then I started reading about them, and I started whatever. We didn't have the internet, but, they were like Johnny Cochran. I mean, they were, Mr. Neal is not known as well as Thompson because he went on, Thompson become a U.S. Senator and everything. But James Neal, he prosecuted Jimmy Hoffa. He repped Ford during the Pinto thing when it was blowing up. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Neal and I got really, really tight during all this. And he told me, he said, Ken, he said, I went to law school here, Fred did. He said, we can't guarantee you to get in. He said, we'll help you if you want to go. He said, if not here, somewhere else. I mean, these guys had juice, man. I mean, meeting with them was like meeting literally mafia dons. So, do I need to shut up yet? I'm just on a roll, aren't I?
Yeah, let me tell you that game, November 19th, 1977, Vanderbilt 13, Cincinnati 9.
Okay, yeah, I thought they won. And that was November
19th. It was a week before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Obviously, they played Tennessee the next week.
Yeah. So during all this,
about your recruiting visit and your time after that, about part of the recruiting process. When did you, I guess, Ken, what I would ask you is, when did you decide that it was going to be Vanderbilt, not Clemson, not Georgia, not Auburn? When did that get solidified for you?
This is where we're getting illegal, all right? I had taken some stuff from some other schools, nothing major. Mm-hmm. I had, like I said, I had car, cash. I'm not naming the schools. So in the meantime, I'm talking with Mr. Neal. And this is pretty regular. And I asked him, I said, my dad had been convicted, right? And my dad was headed to jail. I mean, there's no doubt. So this is 77. He was in the appeal process. He went in to jail in 78. He got, it was 3 to 5 years. He ended up pulling 3. And I talked to Mr. Neal and I said, Mr. Neal, I said, if I was to come to Vanderbilt, is there any way that you could help me with my dad's case? And he looked at me and he said, Ken, he said, I don't touch anything for less than $50,000. He said, I will take a look at your dad's case. And I knew as much about how the law worked back then as it did brain surgery. The odds of getting that thing overturned, it had already gone through the state Supreme Court or whatever, and it ain't happening. But he took the case. But the thing that rang a bell with me, he said 50 grand. He had no way of knowing that Alabama and Auburn had paid Warren and Bragg's 50 grand before. And I was like, man, and what he did, technically, I don't know that the NCAA could have charged Vanderbilt or him. Hey, James Neal and Fred Thompson. They ain't gonna mess with those guys. Right. My Aunt Jean, who's 91 or 92 years old, swears to this day that my grandmother gave Mr. Neal a check for $1,500. So I don't know if that's legit or if she had to write him a check just for coverage or whatever. But anyway, he loses my dad. My dad ends up in jail for my first 2 or 3 years. One of my favorite stories, I signed with Vandy, and we're going in freshman. And I don't know if they did this for you guys. Back then, there wasn't any really predators, or there was no pro teams. it was really just Vanderbilt and Tennessee State, So they would interview the freshmen coming in live. And I remember they were interviewing several of us, and it was, what's your name, where you from, what do your parents do, yada yada yada. And they got to me, and I said, my name's Ken Hammond, I'm from Valley Head, Alabama, and my dad's doing 3 to 5. Well, this is live TV in Nashville. My friends, my teammates, my freshman brothers, they just busted out laughing, But to freeze a reporter, that's hard to do. Well, this dude froze for about, maybe 3 or 4 seconds. Then he just moved on to the next guy. He kind of shook it off. But yeah, it was honestly, George Wallace, my dad going to prison, James Neal, that's how I ended up at Vanderbilt.
That's a remarkable story, Ken. And it's unique in and of itself to obviously to you. Incredible. Who were some of your freshman signees? Who were some of the guys, some of the brothers in your class, your year in 78?
I'm going to say, I want everybody out there that played before 78 that set a bar for my freshman class to know they were my heroes. Those guys, every one of them were top shelf. They treated freshmen the way we needed to be treated. They kicked their butts. These guys played their butts off. They trained. And I'll tell anybody that's ever played at Vanderbilt, we trained as hard or harder than anybody. I know guys that have played at multiple colleges. They didn't practice as hard as we did. They didn't train all season as hard as we did. They just had more depth. That's always what killed us. Some of the big name guys, when I came in up there that were seniors were like Ed Smith, Ronnie Myrick, some of the greatest ball players ever. A guy named Mike Ralston was offensive line.
Kelsey and keeping him together. As long as they
Ricky Dean, like I said, all these guys were really good. We had one of the best freshman classes. We had Mike Woodard, who was as good a kicker as anybody in the SEC. Tim Moore, my brother from South Pittsburgh, big redheaded kid, would absolutely knock your ass off on the field or in a bar fight. Either one, he didn't care. We had Whit Taylor, Norman Jordan, Andrew Coleman, one of the best linebackers ever played at Vanderbilt. We had Greg Simmons. Greg was a great ball player. I know I'm missing a lot of guys, but we had some freaking stallions, man. A lot of these guys, were 4-year starters, and of course, what happened with Whit and Norman that 5th year. So we had a really good freshman class. We had some really great guys in front of us. And then afterwards, we get guys like Jimmy Arnold, Rob Monaco, Bill Fletcher, Mad Dog. I mean, we got loaded, man. If you keep up with Vanderbilt, they go to bowl, or they used to go to bowl about every 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
And then they'd gone to bowl, I think, in 74.
Yeah.
And then they go to another, in 82. And then things just progress. But yeah, it was a great class.
Well, Ken, your freshman year in the backfield, at least at quarterback, you had Van Heflin, Scotty Madison, and a little bit of David Skinner behind the center.
Yep.
You had Frank Mordica as the main running back. Of course, Heflin, Eddie Hood, Lester Mack, some of these guys carried the ball a bunch. We got Wayman Buggs is on that team, Martin Cox, Charles Edwards, Preston Brown. And then on defense, you had Walter Jordan, Carl Allen, Charles Harris.
Yep.
I know these names are flooding back to you. John Pointer. And let's see, from kicking, you had Mike Woodard, as you mentioned.
Yep.
Roger Alsop and Cody Witt.
Yep.
And that's probably the chief players.
Yeah, and Wayman, I know you interviewed Wayman last week or 2 weeks ago. Wayman, one of the top recruits out of Tennessee. Wayman, one of the best receivers ever played. Also, if that was the guy, whoever the punter was, or maybe that was Cody. I mean, Cody was a damn good punter until Jimmy Arnold came in.
Yeah. Well, everybody's good until Jimmy Arnold.
Till
comes.
Jimmy Arnold comes in. I mean, Jimmy's a game changer. There's no doubt. You know, so, but we got loaded up, man. But all those guys that played in front of me,
Mhm.
the biggest, I would carry guys after we finished up to some Vanderbilt games. I had a high school friend of mine. We went up maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and we got hooked up with, you know, some guys that played 2 or 3 years ahead of me. And every one of them looked like they'd been in a knife fight. They were scarred, you know, knees, shoulders, just cut up.
Mhm.
And he looked at me and he said, Ken, he said, these guys are just, I said, dude, up here, the thing that always killed us was depth. And you know that. I said, like Jim Bunch who played at Alabama, Jim averaged playing 35 snaps a game.
Right,
At
right.
Vanderbilt, I played 70, 80, 90 snaps. I told Jim, I said, I played 3 times college ball. You did, you know. So I said, if you want to play a lot of college ball, come to Vanderbilt, because you know you're going to play.
Yeah.
If you're good enough, you're going to play a lot of snaps.
Ken, share a little bit about being the big fish in the Valley Head Pond to being a little fish on the Vanderbilt campus, because for many, many reasons, there's such a contrast. But along with that, I know, like all successful athletes, you have a confidence about your abilities, whether it's in social settings or on the field or in classroom, you're going to be confident to some level, but that gets tested when you're a freshman playing in an SEC school, particularly with Vanderbilt's academic credentials. How did you find that transition?
Bernard, I got to stop here, because before we go any further, for all my brothers out there that went to the Gerst House in the 70s, 80s, whatever, before they built the Titan Stadium, cheers to y'all. I would hate to be sitting here and not drink a beer talking about Vanderbilt and the Gerst House and everything. That was one of the places we used to hang out at all the time. So, brothers.
Very good. Very good.
By the way, y'all know, of course, the Gerst House in Nashville is closed, but there is one in Evansville, Indiana. Just FYI.
Mhm.
Coming in from Valley Head, there was a guy named Randy Carson, and Randy was about 2 inches shorter than me. He weighed the same. And Randy and I have been banging on each other since 5th grade. Randy signed with Middle Tennessee State. So, and we had a linebacker named Alan Biddle that signed with Troy.
Mhm.
So for an A ball with 18 kids, you get 3 seniors going, you know, scholarships. I was already going against some, Randy and I, like I said, man, we killed each other the whole time. And the next kid down from us, I weighed 220, 225. The next kid down from us was like 160. So if I wasn't used to banging with Randy, when I came into Vandy my freshman year, I mean, it was a wide awakening, needless to say, all freshmen go through. But thank God I've been banging with Randy. You know, I got my ass kicked. Everybody does their freshman year. I played defense my freshman. I started 3 games, and then I was second team and you know, the special teams or whatever. But there wasn't really an ego issue or a big fish in a little pond, because Randy and I have been banging on each other. And B, if you're out of Valley Head, Alabama, and you got a big ego coming into an SEC school, good luck with that, man. It's, you know,
It didn't last long.
No, you got 18 kids on the team. You know, the seniors and the juniors, they'd kick my ass, but you know, they were kicking everybody else's ass too.
Do you remember a welcome to the SEC moment, whether somebody got the best of you or you got
Oh God,
somebody?
yeah. So we open up with Arkansas in Little Rock Saturday night. Now, the biggest crowd I'd ever played in front of was like 500 people. And we go out that tunnel, and there's 50-something thousand people with those pig hats on. They're spitting at us. They're throwing shit at us. And, you know, to go from 500 people to that, I'm thinking, Toto, we ain't Kansas anymore, you know. So I'm doing specialty teams, and we're in on the goal line stand. And Arkansas had some offensive guard. This guy, I don't remember his name. He went on, I think he got 10 or 12 years in at the show. But I was a 2 technique, and Ed Smith, their All-American linebacker, was right behind me. Well, I came out high, and I think this dude drove me back 20 yards. I mean, he blew me right past Ed. Well, those that play with Ed know that Ed was so quick that he could fill a hole. So even though I got blown out, Ed, made the tackle and stopped the guy with no gain. Well, we get back in the huddle, and my nickname, Ed called me one back because I'd hurt my back freshman year. And he was like, and if the guys that play with Ed, he's in my face. One back, you got to stay low, man. You got to stay low. You got to stay low. From then on, any goal line stand I was on, literally my face mask was on the ground. I mean, I wasn't making any tackles, but ass wasn't getting blown back. And with Ed, as long as the offensive linemen aren't getting Ed, he's going to make the tackle. So, but yeah, I got my ass skated first play.
Well, Ken, that was a hell of an Arkansas team. They were number 2 in the country.
They were good, man.
They beat us 48-17 that night at Arkansas. We've got some more Commodores who are in the house. Want to mention to you, we got Will Wolford, Coach Gene Wyndham. We got Big Cat, David Cat in the house. Hey guys, thank you for joining us with Ken Hammond with us this evening. Ken, when did you switch over to offense?
Sophomore year. It was weird. Tim Moore, my compadre, he started several games and played a lot of offensive guard freshman year, and I was defense. And then, Coach Pankos leaves. Coach Mack comes in, and they flip-flop me and Tim. To this day, I don't know why. But they moved me to offense and Tim to defense. So then Tim and I have been banging on each other, one side of the ball, and then we switched the other. Like I said, Tim was a great player. But, yeah, I started from sophomore year on out, yeah. And
at that point, you had put on some size, I know. What had you gotten up to your sophomore year?
Yeah, I got up to, I think 240. So, yeah, I put on 20 pounds, 25 pounds or whatever. Again, I don't know what you want to get into tonight. If you want to get into any of that Doc Creek stuff,
well,
to talk about it.
I was going to ask you those, and certainly you share what you want, share what you don't. I mean, don't share what you don't, but we know Doc's story, and we know what happened with him historically late into the 80s, but this is well before that time period.
It is. And steroids have been around for 100 years. Mm-hmm. All right. I started taking them after my senior year. My Japanese brother-in-law, he told me, he said, because in my high school, the only weights we had was a universal machine. That was it. So he started driving me to YMCA in Chattanooga and started lifting free weights. This guy had run marathons. He was a weightlifter. So he taught me how to lift free weights. He taught me how to run. And he said, you got to start putting weight on. So he got me steroids. He put me on protein, the creatine, and I was on that the 4 years at Vandy, all the way through the 3 years in the NFL. It really wasn't a big deal. I mean, steroids have been around, like I said, for 100 years. I tell people, I said, I swear to God I was taking them. But I never failed a drug test at Vanderbilt. I played in 3 postseason bowl games. Then 3 years in the NFL with 2 different teams constantly getting tested. I never tested positive. So either nobody cared or I was getting sold some bogus stuff. But, everybody, I'd say a third of the linemen were taken in college and probably maybe 40% in the NFL. It wasn't a big deal. it really wasn't illegal. If you remember the first time it gained notoriety, what was the linebacker from Oklahoma?
Bosworth.
Bosworth. That's the first time anybody even cared about the stuff, you know.
And that wasn't until the mid 80s.
Yeah. And honestly, any gym you went into, there was always somebody that had it, you know, and you could buy it. And I didn't think anything about it. Man, if you guys at Vandy took them, some of us talked. There were some other guys that probably did. We didn't talk. I mean, it wasn't anything you just sit around and talk about. And you know how it is with any team, you've got such a diverse group of people. I mean, you got FCA guys, you know, you got Brainiac guys, you got kind of artsy guys, and then you got the beer drinkers and hellraisers, which happened to be my group. And, you know, there was a lot of us that were taking steroids. Like I said, wasn't that big a deal. But the reason I wanted to bring up Doc, I know most people to this day don't even know who he was. Doc Crease was one of the greatest strength coaches ever. Doc came in and taught us really how to lift weights. I never got, bought, or was given anything from Doc Crease. Freaking FBI called me when all that stuff went down. And I think I was my first year. I don't remember what year it was. I was at Dallas, but I'm back in Valleyhead off season or whatever. And I get a call at my grandmother's house from FBI. Well, first thing I'm thinking is, how in the hell do these guys know I'm in Valleyhead at my grandmother's house? This is pre-internet, no social media. Well, next thing I'm thinking is, they're the damn FBI. So, and they asked me, they said, you know, where did you get your steroids from? And I said, any gym in America. I said, I bought them at any gym. I said, there's nothing to it. I said, I never bought anything from Doc Crease. And he never gave me anything. And they were like, okay, click. And that was it. I don't know how that all played out because I was gone. But for me personally, Doc never gave me nothing. And I thank God today for Doc Crease. He's one of the best strength coaches ever. That's why I wanted to bring that up. Okay.
And I appreciate that because I think there's a lot of that same sentiment
Yeah.
from players who were there during his years. Ken, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about life on campus. As many have described, it doesn't matter what years you played, many have described varying levels of acceptance of athletes by the faculty, by other students who didn't play sports. And so it was kind of a mixed bag, but probably a lot different than some of our buddies who played at state schools, where a lot of those guys are just revered just because they're on the team. What was your experience from dealing with other students, faculty, or anybody else that was not part of the program?
Not a problem. I mean, it's did we have 30,000 students knowing who we were? No. I mean, Vanderbilt's not a football school. The kids that I met there were as nice as they could be. My teammates, I loved, you know, I mean, honestly, you know how it is. You get up, you lift weights in the morning, or you go to practice, you're going through 3 days, you're going through everything. You catch a few classes or whatever. And if you're doing any socializing, it's usually with your teammates, you know. I would hang out at the SAE house some. There was a couple of guys that I played with that pledged, but those kids at Vandy were as nice as they could be to me. I had no problems. I never saw anybody that I went to school with, you know, have any problems. They knew we played football. And you know, there's always going to be certain students that want to hang out with football players, and that's cool, you know, but the guys that played at the state schools that had the fan clubs or whatever, again, that can be a problem too, because you can get distracted from what you're there for.
Yeah.
I mean, you're there to play football.
Yeah.
And, you got to stay eligible, but you got to play football. I knew a lot of guys that got caught up in a lot of stuff at the state schools that, again, there's no perfect scenario. I know a lot of guys that didn't make it at other schools.
Yeah. What was most fun for you looking back? And maybe you appreciated it during that time, or maybe it took till after you were out of school. But what was most fun for you about being a Vanderbilt student athlete?
I got my brothers, man, camaraderie. That was just hanging out with them. If you're an offensive or defensive lineman and you played back in the 70s, everything you did was with your head. I mean, it was butt blocking and butt tackling. So I had an offensive line coach in high school. He told me, he said, I wish I could cut offensive linemen's arms off. He said, because all you use them for is to hold. He said, all you need to do is put that head in there. So the game back then was all butt blocking and tackling. If you're a lineman, you're banging on each other every freaking play. Anybody that says that they just loved it, I don't think hit 80, 90 times. You got to be a little sadistic. I love my teammates. I would die for them. 3 days, 100 degrees, losing 12 pounds in a 2 or 3 hour practice. That's some tough. If you love that shit, you probably need to become a Navy SEAL or something, man. That's the only thing I know that might be tougher.
I want to stick on that for just a minute.
All right.
Your 3 a days were not my 2 a days, were not the 1 a days or whatever the guys go through now as per the NCAA requirements. Admittedly, I'm sure what my group went through was not as harsh as what your group went through. But how did you guys survive it mentally and physically? How'd you get through that?
I don't know. Honestly, we talk about it. A lot of it was just gallows humor. You go in that locker room for that first practice and you know what's coming. Like I said, 2.5 hour practice. It wasn't anything to lose, 10 pounds, 12. It was water weight, but it's still. I honestly don't know. It was, I tried to describe it to people. I said, the first week, if your whole body becomes one big knot. I mean, you're bruised from head to toe. Your whole body is just one big knot. And I remember rolling out of bed and crawling on my knees, to pull up on something to go to the bathroom. We all did. I mean, it wasn't special for me. And then after about that second or third week, I guess it's what they call toughening up. All of a sudden, your body just really quits bruising and quits knotting up unless you just take a baseball bat hit. It was kind of weird to, how it processed through, but I don't know how we made it, but the guys, like my dad played at Troy back in the late 40s, early 50s. When he first started playing football, they didn't have a bar. He had a helmet with no bar. And he would tell me how rough their practices were. And I guess each generation thinks that theirs was tougher. I don't know what it was like before or after, but I can tell you those 3 days at Vanderbilt were a freaking bear, man.
I'm sure they were. I want to welcome Brian Badger and Gary Clark to the conversation.
What's up, brothers?
Kenny Cole talks about in the chatter about being a bouncer at Cactus Jack's. One, do you remember Cactus Jack's?
Yes.
And
yes.
two,
vaguely.
How good of a bouncer was Kenny Cole?
He's still alive.
Very much so. Very much so.
I bounced before. I've been knifed. Big Cat was bouncing at a bar in Nashville, and one of the other bouncers got shot. if you've ever bounced before, really, if you come out alive, you're a good bouncer. So I know Kenny is a scrapper and he's a fighter. The problem with bouncing is you're not planning on pulling a knife or a gun. Those other guys, like I said, my first night I bounced in Chattanooga, I was 17 and I lied about my age. And there was a linebacker named Frank Jordan, I think. This was like December. But first night on the job, man, this kid pulls a knife and he stabs me in the arm and he cut Frank's throat. I mean, he cut him from here to here, but luckily he didn't hit a jugular. And Frank was playing at Chattanooga. We actually played them later on, and I talked to him after the game. He had like a rope scar.
Oh man.
If you came out alive from bouncing, you were good, but you probably gonna get some scars, man. It was tough.
Now, Greg mentions a single incident that no one would ever forget that occurred at Cactus Jack's. Is that ringing a bell with you, or should we move on?
No, it's not, man. It's not. Like I said, my main bars I remember were like Waxy's and Jonesy's. You know, and
Jonesy's was
Ghost
still
House.
around when I was there.
Yeah. Cactus Jack's I remember, but I don't remember the story, man.
Well, Greg, you're going to have to come on and share that story,
Absolutely.
or at least hint around on it when we get you on the show, guys. I've got Ken Hammond out of Valley Head. He's sharing some great stories, and Ken, folks want to know about that promo picture of you wearing your 76 jersey and the two cheerleaders, one on each arm.
Okay. All right. This is a good one. So I'd never been to a country club. All right. Valley Head, 500 people. We don't have country clubs. So I'm not going to name any names. One of those girls in that picture I'm dating. Now, her family's Belmead. And this was sophomore year. I had gone, we'd shaved our heads. A bunch of us had shaved our heads. And I'm going through a pass blocking drill, and some guy just sticks his thumb in my eye. So I've got an eye swollen shut. I've got a shaved head. I'm looking like something off of America's Most Wanted. Well, why she's dating me, honestly, I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't real pretty. I had zero money, and she's bailed me, but I think maybe she had daddy issues. She wanted to piss her parents off. So she's carrying me out to meet her parents. And, they're nice, but, they're looking at me, and I know they're thinking, we're paying 20 or 30 grand a year, whatever it was back then. And she's bringing in like some biker dude or something, So we go to Belmead, and I had, I think, $5 or whatever. It was a Monday night football game. Or I may have had 20, I can't remember. But I'm thinking, all right, I can drink a couple beers, she can drink a couple beers, and we'll coast. So if you remember back in the 70s, those little green Perrier bottles, those were huge. She's slamming those damn things like a duck. I mean, I think she drank 3 of them before the kickoff. And I don't know if she's dehydrated.
And were her parents there that evening?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'm thinking, all right, I don't know what those things cost, but I've already had a couple of beers. So I figure we done blown us $20. So I just start power drinking, man. I think, if I'm going to get thrown out of this place, it ain't going to be over $5. I'm going to make it worth my time. Well, she switched from Perrier's and she's getting mixed drinks. I'm like, load up, man. Let's party. So toward the fourth quarter, I looked at her. I said, man, here's the deal. I said, I got $20. And I said, I'm assuming this thing is going to be more than that. I said, why don't you head out the car? I said, I'm going to go like towards the bathroom. And then I'm just going to kind of ease on out of here and we'll do a little drinking and dashing. And she just busted out laughing. And I was like, what? She said, they don't take money here. I said, how's that work? And I knew, they had credit cards back then, but I never had one. Not that many people from Valley Head did have a credit card. She said, we bill everything on account. And I said, how's that work? She said, I just signed my name to it. She said, my parents get a monthly statement. I was in love, man. I was like, this is like freaking Disneyland. So I dated her off and on for like a year, and you would have thought I was a member at Bell Mead, man. And I was bringing teammates out there. She had to be with me. But I mean, like I said, she must have had daddy issues. We were just jacking her dad's bill, whatever. And anyway, she and I ended up breaking up. I actually pulled the plug on the gig. And some of my teammates were like, Ken, no, you can't do this to us, man. So no, we're going to lose our country.
You can't do it to us.
We're going to lose our country club privileges. I said, boys, we had a good run, but that was my first experience with a country club, and I started with Bell Mead. So that was pretty damn good, man.
I was going to say, now she's one of the two girls in that picture.
She is, Alex. I'm not naming any name, but
Sure. Now, was that like a preseason promo picture? Or what was
yeah.
that?
That was going in, I think, to senior year, and that was they were doing promo shots. They would do the billboards, around Nashville, and they were doing the cups and the calendars and all that stuff. So that was a promo shot. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say or tell you who asked, but they want to know, how long did it take you to do your hair for that promo shot?
Everybody back in the 70s was Travolta, and we were all working on our lids. So I'm going to say maybe 10 minutes, but we had a running back, and I'm not naming any names, but he was Travolta. And so not as long as this dude, probably 10 minutes. Yeah. Everybody was working on their lids back then because we all wanted to be Travolta, right?
Well, he may have taken a while, but you're the one who got the cover shot.
Yeah.
All right. Kenny Cole wants to talk about the time that the police rolled into practice.
Into practice.
Is that ringing a bell?
If I'm thinking of the right thing, that was one of our players that had busted a guy up in a bar fight, and that's for him to tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kenny wasn't implying that it had anything to do with you.
Yeah. No, it was like I said, a lot of people got in religion. I'm as religious as anybody. I mean, I pray every day, but I wasn't FCA. I was more beer drinking Hellraiser, but this was a really good player. And if I'm thinking about the same person, I think the player was a bouncer, and he busted the guy. The guy took a warrant out on him or whatever.
Well, Ken, let's talk about the transition to the NFL. You get drafted in the 6th round with the Cowboys.
Yep.
And you're in the league for 2 or 3 years, excuse me.
Yep.
It's one thing to go ahead.
All right. And again, man, I've told this story 1,000 times. When the guys that go to college, regardless of back then, D1, D2, D3, they are really, really good ball players. You got to be to go next level. I don't care what level you're going to, SEC or Swanee, you're good. Then you get into college, everybody is freaking good. Then you got some really, really good players that get to go next level. You get into the NFL, obviously everybody is really, really good, but then you got some guys there that are just next level. So when I came out of Valley Head playing A-ball, even, against county schools, there was a few guys went to college, but nobody was just really mind-boggling. So when I get to Vanderbilt, every team we're playing, plus the guys I'm playing with, are really, really good. But nobody was mind-boggling. the story I love to tell is you look at Auburn. I was playing defense my freshman year, and you had William Andrews, James Brooks, and Joe Cribbs in the same backfield. And all those guys were really, really good. They all got good careers in the NFL.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that played over the 4 years that I was in the SEC that were really, really good. I didn't see Superman until Herschel Walker. And anybody that played against him or with him will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We're watching film on him freshman year. His freshman year, I think, was maybe my junior year. And I'd heard about it. Everybody heard about it. One of the first plays I see him do, it was like 3rd and 1. So he leaps from like 2 yards back in the backfield. He goes up and over. I mean, he's already gone in the air 5 yards, got a vertical jump like a damn Olympic athlete. Well, he's coming head down into a pile, and somebody comes up and just nails him. And when he's going head down, the guy nails him. Well, when they do, they bounce him back up right a little bit. He lands on his feet, spins around, and runs like 70 yards for a touchdown. We're watching this on film, and the whole room is just quiet. That was some next level stuff. So when the Cowboys drafted me, I don't know, the story. I broke my ankle a couple of times. So I was projected to go late 1st, early 2nd. I broke my ankle a week before the Maryland game. I was back playing on it with the Alabama game. So I was back playing on it 3 weeks later. Played the whole year on it.
Wait, how in the world, Ken, y'all played Maryland September 13th of 80.
Yeah.
You played Alabama 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
How?
Again, man, no holds barred, xylocaine, number 3 Tylenols. We've all sprained ankles, and we've all had sprains. And first time my ankle broke, there was that, and I was like, damn, that's new. Because when you play hurt. Everybody plays through hurt. You do the ice pack, the whirlpools. If it's a hip pointer or turf toe, not sound bad back then, they're going to shoot it. Right. And that's one of the things I like about the way things have changed. Nowadays, if I broke my ankle, today, I'm casted and redshirted. There's no question about it. Yeah. So they put me on a stationary bike. Well, anyway, when I popped it, I got up and I was like, damn, this hurts to stand on, man. And I'm limping, and Tim Moore's on the sidelines, and he yelled to me, suck it up, big man, suck it up. I was like, you SOB. So I go and I run like 3 more plays. And I mean, I can't put any weight on it. I did 3 or 4 plays, and I went up to her trainer and I said, man, something ain't right. I said, this ain't no sprain. So anyway, they carry, they x-ray it or whatever. And it was the medial malleolus. Anyway, it was the inside ankle bone that holds it into socket. Medial malleolus. I got a PhD or doctorate in orthopedic surgery over the next few years. But so I played back for the Alabama game, xylocaine and Tylenol and all that good stuff. Finished the year out, went to Senior Bowl.
I want to pause you because I want to give an observation and a compliment. You can have all the medicine and get taped up as much as you want, but if you don't have the mindset to match it, you're not going back and playing at Alabama in 2 weeks. So clearly your mindset at that time had to have been strong enough as an athlete, as a person, to be able to get into that, back into action even with all that medication and all the taping and everything.
You got to play with pain, right?
Yeah.
And there's different levels of pain.
Yeah.
And you know, it's anybody that's ever played from Pee Wee ball on through, there's different levels of pain, so you get used to dealing with it. This was a whole new level, but again, with some stuff, you know, it was doable.
Were you able to keep playing that year? Because you guys had Tulane, then Georgia, then Ole Miss. I mean, it just one after another.
I played after Alabama the whole game or the rest of the season. And I had a good year. The previous year, my junior year, I had a really, really good year. I'd made second team All SEC, and then I was runner up for the Jacobs Trophy, which I know most people know was a offensive lineman, best offensive lineman in SEC. So going into my senior year, I was projected late first, early second. Well, then when I broke it, from what people were telling me, it had knocked me down, you know, to middle rounds. And then I had a good year, my senior year, made first team All SEC and runner up again for Jacobs Trophy. Played in Blue Gray, played in East West Shrine. We're practicing in the Senior Bowl. And I'm a son of a buck if I don't break it again. So this time with the Senior Bowl, they used Houston Clinic in Columbus. And for those that don't know, that was where Andrews came from. I mean, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, Jack Houston was so I went over there and because then if you got hurt in the Senior Bowl, that's where they sent you. And they were like, why was this not cast? And I said, I don't know. And they said, there's no way, you know, it should have been. And I was like, so anyway, they casted it. So we go into, that was in January. So, and also I had some bone spurs in both ankles I need to get cut out. So I went ahead and got those cut too, since I was going to be out with the cast. I went to they didn't really have like the major combine back then, if I remember correctly, but I know I went to Buffalo. I was out of a cast, but I was limited, you know, on stuff. And then I went to Dallas for some stuff. But they said that I'd played myself through the year pretty much back up to where I was late first, early second. And then they said when I broke it that second time, you know, it knocked me back to middle round. So I'm actually living across the street from when I got the phone call for the draft in 82 when the Cowboys drafted me. And to tell you how naive I was back then and how I was pissed that I didn't go earlier. Now I broke my ankle twice, right? But I'd been being told I was going to go late first, early second. I was kind of pissed. Well, now that I know how it works, I thank God to this day for the Dallas Cowboys, man. You know, just to take a shot on me after breaking my ankle twice. You know, you'll never hear me say one bad word about the Dallas Cowboys. God bless them, man.
Was that Coach Landry? Was that Texas A&M?
Yeah.
And so you get off to Dallas, and who are some of the guys who were drafted your year? Any notable names?
Not really. Some really obviously good players. Rod Hill was the first round pick. You know, I think Rod got 2 or 3 years in with them, and then I don't know how many years he got in the league. There were no really superstars. The best offensive lineman out of their group was a kid named Phil Pies Derrick, and he went in the 6th. I think he went before me. There were 2 6-round. He played at Notre Dame.
Oh, great memory here. I've got the names right here for you.
Yeah.
See if it jogs a memory.
Yeah.
Rod Hill was number 1 out of Kentucky State.
Yep.
Jeff Rohrer, a linebacker out of Yale.
Good ball player. He got several years in.
Jim Iliopoulos.
Yep.
Out of Wyoming.
Yep.
Brian Carpenter out of Michigan, Monty Hunter out of Salem, and then Paz Derek out of Notre Dame, and then you.
Yep.
Yeah.
All obviously, I mean, to even everybody that has played college ball that has gone to next level, no matter how you get there, you're good. Everybody that went from high school to college next level is good. There was some really, really good players in that group. When I got to Dallas, I wasn't going to be, I was never going to be a John Hammond. I would have probably got 5-7 years in with different teams. I kind of kept up after I broke my ankle with Dallas. I kind of kept up with the guys that I was drafted with and the guys I played, against in college or whatever. And just to kind of see how it would have probably, played out. You never know. But Paz Derek was better than me. The other freshman I was kind of equal with or whatever. The best offensive lineman on the team was Herb Scott. Herb, HBCU guy, I think he was 12th round. If he's not in the Hall of Fame, he should be. Everybody that played on my offensive line at Dallas was really good. But the next level player, the Herschel Walker that you saw, was Randy White. He was.
Ken, did I lose you? For those of you watching on the feed, is Ken frozen up or is it me? It may be Ken. Somebody give me a comment. Hopefully we'll get him right back. And we've got a few more minutes I want to spend with Ken. Ken, you still there, bud?
Hear you. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yeah, I think we're both here.
All right.
Let me talk to us a little bit about the difference in playing in such a business, the NFL. It's not college. It's not you're not treated the same way, but you learn pretty quickly after 3 years about how the NFL business works.
I don't know how it was for guys, that came out in the early 80s, but for me, college was business. It was, you were there to play ball. Granted, you had to stay eligible, and if you went on and did whatever, but college was business. The NFL, 100% business. Like I said, the Cowboys organization, everything that I've got with Coach Landry to Gil Brandt on down, they were class acts. Everything that you've heard about Coach Landry, he was the most straight shooting dude. Again, man, I've been in camp like, I forget, maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and I'm popped my ankle again. So that was the third time in 11 months that it had popped. But I was having a decent camp. Like I said, Randy White, I could not pass block that son of a buck, but neither could be anybody else other than John Hammond. I had never had anybody to get me off of my feet in the whole time in the NFL or in the SEC, those bowl games. And for those that have wondered, once you get into the pros back then, even in the early 80s, it was pass blocking. That was the name of the game. If you didn't already know how to run block by the time you got to the NFL, you're not going to be there.
Right.
But pass blocking was still, because when I came into the SEC, we still had to use the old double chicken wing. You had to keep your arms, and then towards the end, it got where we could, put our hands out.
Yeah.
So that being able to extend your arms was a game changer for offensive linemen and for throwing the ball and everything else. But like I said, Randy White, he was he was the baddest kid. They had, Tall Jones, Harvey Martin, John Dutton. I mean, it's a whole list of Hall of Famers. But anybody that ever played against Randy White will tell you it's the baddest cat that ever walked the planet. So, but anyway, there's that.
Ken, I wanna pivot for our last topic, and I appreciate your time and
No
sharing your experiences. I really have two things I want to ask. I want you to share, if you're talking to, let's say, the freshmen or the younger guys on the team, or even high school seniors who are thinking about Vanderbilt.
Okay.
What are some things that you have learned that maybe they need to be thinking about that might not have crossed their mind as they're coming on to McGugan and Just Neely?
Right now is why that we're having this conversation right here, right now. Like I said, when I popped my ankle in the Senior Bowl, I had to get surgery, so I didn't finish. I like a semester and a half in Vanderbilt. I was hesitant about doing this when we started talking. And then Kenny Cole said to me, he said, man, do it because there may be one kid that touches you. So here's what I'm going to say to every freaking high school superstar out there that's getting smoked, blowed up their tails, that they're going to be the next superstar. It ain't happening. Okay. 1 out of 3 kids makes it from the time they come in their freshman class until their 4th or 5th year. I've kept up with this stuff ever since I went to college. And you look on any team photo at the kids that are from the freshman class. We came in, I think, with 30 and we finished with 10 or whatever. You always lose. They either flunk out, they quit, they do whatever. I'm a big believer in the NIL. I'm a big believer in doing anything you can to better yourself. The whole reason we go to college is to get an education to help make more money. The whole reason we go to college is to possibly get a shot at the NFL to make more money. 2% of high school kids get college scholarships. Only 0.5% go Power 5. 2% of college kids get drafted. The average lifespan in the NFL is 3.2 years. So if you think you're going to be the next Herschel Walker, I want you to keep believing that until you find out you're not. I never want to tell a kid that they're not going to be the next Randy White or Herschel Walker, because if somebody told me I was going to go from Valley Head to Dallas, I'd say, there's no freaking way. You never know. But what I want to say is this. There are basically 70 Power 5 schools. The odds of you signing with and playing for a national championship team are slim to damn none. Of the 6 official visits that I took, 3 of those during that time won national championships. Penn State won 1, Georgia won 1, and Clemson won 1. So if I'd been really just wanting to play to win a national championship, obviously I'd have had better odds. But back then, nobody knew that Clemson was going to get, really good, or Georgia was going to get really good. Hell, it had been 40-something years. The odds of you picking that team that's going to win that national championship during the 4 or 5 years you're there is like hitting a lottery. So what you better do is plan on staying eligible, getting some kind of degree. I don't care what it is or where it's from. If you go pro, great. Again, the average lifespan is 3.2 years. Why go to Vanderbilt? I'm on a cruise about 10 years ago wearing Vandy gear, and I meet LT Southall. They're on the same cruise. We're in the Mediterranean. And he'd retired from ExxonMobil, engineer. And I'm wearing Vandy gear. You don't see that many people with Vandy gear. His wife comes up to me on this cruise ship. She said, "You go to Vandy?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "So did my husband." "You play ball?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "So did he." I said, "That's cool." Blah, blah, blah. You meet so many people that tell you they played. As soon as we got in the next port, I get Wi-Fi and I Google LT Southpaw. I'm thinking he ain't gonna show up. Well, sure enough, he played and made the second team All SEC. So I wasn't even talking to the dude, because it's not to sound bad. You get tired of talking to people about sports. So we got back and they come up to this bar we're in, and it's like, "How you doing?" We start talking, and I said, "You know what, dude? I didn't think you even played." And he said, "I didn't think you did either." He said, "As soon as I got the report, I Googled you." I said, "That's cool." I said, So over the next week, 10 days or whatever, we talked a lot about Vanderbilt, and LT summed it up better than I've ever heard it summed up. He said, "Great school, great city, great conference, great teammates." He said, "It would have been nice to win a few more games." But he said, "Other than that, great experience." And I'm going to say the same damn thing to any kid out there. If you are bucking and your sole goal is to win a national championship, you got to get offered by all 70 Power 5 schools. And you got to pick the right one that is going to win one during that 4 or 5 years you're there. Good luck with that. I don't know if anybody in Herschel Walker probably got offered 70 Power 5s. Our guys from Vanderbilt, I've noticed, and I think it's having a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because we really didn't win a lot of games. We kind of came out a little pissed off. So we get out in the real world and we seem to kind of do really good. And I think that having a chip on your shoulder kind of helps you, because I've seen a lot of guys that went to schools where they won, and that was really what they rode on for the next 20, 30 years. They kind of coasted, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not judging, but they really didn't do really well. Like I said, their claim to fame was winning, 7, 8 games or whatever in college. And that's cool. But once you're done with college, that shit don't pay anymore. You got to get out here in the jungle. You got to hit it. We got a chip on our shoulder. And even though I didn't graduate at Vanderbilt, if you tell somebody went to Vanderbilt, that rings a bell. I like the way we're trying to do stuff now as far as helping younger kids get into some programs and maybe help them with their careers. That wasn't happening with us in the 70s and 80s. The company that I worked with after football, I went into sales for 25 years. And we primarily just hired ex-athletes. And we hired guys from all over various teams, and not one guy that they played at Tennessee, they played at Alabama, they played at Auburn, they played Georgia. Not one guy that I met that worked with me in my company had a job lined up for them from an alum after college. So if that's starting to happen now, that's great. The last experience I had with that in the mid-90s, we had some guys that had played with Peyton Manning from Tennessee. There were 3 of them. And they came to work with us in sales. And none of them had any job offers, after college. So if that's starting to happen, Vanderbilt and Nashville need to really get behind that. That's I'm all for anything that helps the kids, be it jobs, be it the NIL, be it whatever. But if you come to Vanderbilt, the job opportunities in Nashville, Tennessee are better than Starkville, Mississippi. Let's just be honest with each other. Nashville is one of the fastest growing, wealthiest towns in America. So unless you can pick that team that's going to win a national championship, good luck with that. But if you come to Vandy, again, SEC, the academic reputation, if we're getting behind the jobs thing, but Nashville, man, I can't find a reason to not go. And I've told people this, and it blows their mind. I've got 2 cousins that won 3 national championship rings at Alabama. Great ball player. Matt Hammond, I named him, but Matt Hammond played in the early 90s. He started, I think he still holds a record for guys that started at Alabama. Neither one of those guys went on to the next level. They were great college ball players. At Vanderbilt, from my home county, right here in DeKalb, there's only been in 103 years in the NFL, there's only been 5 people drafted. 2 of us played at Vanderbilt. One at Chattanooga, one at Auburn, and then the kid recently from the McPherson kid that's kicking for the Bengals. He played at Florida. He's the first kid get drafted since me back in '82. So when people say, "Oh man, you're not going to go pro if you play at Vanderbilt," I said, "I don't know about that." I said, "If you're from DeKalb County, you got a hell of a lot better odds." I said, "We've had 2 out of 5 to go." I said, "There ain't nobody from Alabama go. Ain't nobody that's played anywhere." So if you're from DeKalb County and go pro, play at Vanderbilt. I can't give you a reason not to go there other than you probably aren't going to win a national championship, but you're probably not going to win one anywhere else. So how's that for a short answer, man?
That's fantastic. And Ken, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story and so many of your stories, your journey, your stories.
No problem.
Guys, this is why I do this show every week. We're telling the oral history of the program going back from the 50s to last week. We had Ethan Barr, who's on the current team, number 32, one of the starting linebackers. And Ken Hammond is very much a part of that late 70s, early 80s crew. And I can't thank you enough, number 76, for sharing your story with us tonight.
Not a problem. And one last thing we'll sign off with is, guys, the NIL is here. It ain't going away. Alabama just got their first billionaire, the yellow feller, the big Auburn alum, the Wood guy, to the best of my knowledge, he's the first billionaire. Texas has got 55 billionaires. I think California's got like 80.
Mhm.
The NIL is going to change its game over the next 10 years. We've all done really good, but I don't know of any former players that have become billionaires. But Vanderbilt right now, from everything I've read, has 100 billionaires that have graduated over the last 40 or 50 years that are still, and granted, there's a lot of them in China. There's a lot of them all over the world. But if you know anybody that has that kind of juice that wants to get involved with the NIL, and if you're a billionaire, $1 million really is like $5 to the rest of us. Ask these guys if you know them. I mean, we ain't got nothing to lose, but this NIL thing's, it's here, man, and it ain't going away. In theory, it could help us because we're one of the wealthiest schools in the SEC as far as our alums go. So we'll see. But y'all reach out, man.
We've got some momentum with the Vandy United, with all the construction that's going on, all these great programs that we've talked about tonight for these kids. It just as a closing side note, when I was up there this last week with LT and several other former football players, Scotty Madison, Gary Gimbrell, George Smith, and some others, and we got to speak to the upper class players in the room, and then we broke out into sessions. The questions that they're asking are just spot on. They are craving interaction from the football alums.
Yep.
They want to know what we already know. And anytime we can interact with them through Black and Gold or whatever organization that they need us through the athletics department, make yourself available. We've got every profession. We've got the whole country covered and every profession covered. Just make yourself available. And as Coach Lee always says, just show up.
And again, I will take 100 guys that played with me over the 4 years at Vanderbilt, and I will put them against any 100 guys on any team in the country. Our guys have really done well after college, out in the real world.
Yeah.
From the guys that I know at state schools, like I said, only maybe half of them. But guys, this NIL thing, like I said, man, it's Scotty Madison. Scotty has done as well as anybody. I'm so proud of what he's done. Guys like that, somebody from our program knows somebody that knows a billionaire. So let's network, man. Let's help these kids. And if you don't believe in NIL, so be it, but it's here.
It is. And Scotty will be on the show in 2 weeks. And if
That's
you've got
cool.
want to reach out to folks in the athletic department, but don't know the right person or don't know who to contact me offline. I'm in touch with a lot of these people, and they love what we're doing in our group. Guys, I'm gonna hang up for now. Y'all have a great rest.
Thank you, Dan. And hey, brothers, much love. We'll see y'all for the opener in a month. And let's get this, baby. Let's get it.
Ken, hang on with me for just a second. before I
Okay,
hang up.
brother.